Hello, my name is Daniel Richardson and I'm a senior lecturer in psychology, and this is my home department, as you know, but right now I'm on sabbatical, so the view from my office is more like this and I look more like this. I can't be with you in person, so I recorded this very brief introduction to some of the work that we do in my lab and some of the projects I'm offering to third years this year. So the essential question in my lab is, are we individual or social creatures? And what is the effect of social context on cognitive processes? So my lab studies memory, language, decision-making processes, all these things that are used when you're in the midst of other people, surrounded by a crowd, talking to people. However, mostly in psychology, we study language, decision-making processes, visual perception on people in isolation. We put people in tiny laboratory cubicles, they're not allowed to interact with anyone else, and we look at them in social isolation. What my lab tries to do is experimentally build back in this social context and see how it affects thought processes. There's been lots of work looking at face perception, showing that when people look at a face, they look at the eyes most of the time, the mouth occasionally, perhaps they look differently if they're autistic, but there's a very straightforward way that people look at a face when it's shown on screen. But there's something very different about a face that you meet outside an experimental laboratory, and that's the fact that a face can look back at you. And this is a very unusual thing about eyes. Ears can't speak, lips can't hear, but eyes can both signal something to someone as well as perceiving something. So in our lab, we try and examine what's the effect of the fact that when you look at a face, it can also look back at you. And together with my grad student, Matt Goebel, we did a series of experiments where we showed people a face. And what we find is that if people believe that this face can look back at them, it changes how they look at the face. In fact, where they look in the face now depends on the social rank of the person. So if they're looking at someone of high social rank, but the person can't look back at them, they look at the eyes. But if they believe this person of high social rank can see them too, then they look away from the eyes, as if they won't look directly into the gaze of someone who's a higher social status than you. In another set of experiments, we're looking at group action. We want to see how the thought processes of an individual changes when they're surrounded by other people. We've also been looking at group cognition. And if you look in the history of psychology, mostly people think that mobs are very bad things, that when we get together in large mobs or collections of people, we become stupider. As they said in Men in Black, a person is clever, but people are stupid. Irina von Zimmern and I have developed this system called the Hive, which is a tool for public engagement. It means we can have hundreds of people in a room, all with their smartphones or iPads, pressing the screen. And together, all of their motions can be shown on a display in front of people. So you can ask people questions like, are people incorrigibly evil? And they can give their responses. But they can give their responses in private, or they can give their responses while watching everyone else's dots move. And the simple question is, if you see the opinions of others around you, are you influenced by what they think? As well as asking people's opinions, we can get them to engage in group activities. So in these experiments using the Hive, we ask one half of the room to chant together, to read out words in one voice, to engage in a group activity, a bit like those Borussia Dortmund fans were chanting along together. And then we give them a challenge, like to move their dots down this white line, but to move it in time with each other. And what we found is that if people have been chanting, they were much more likely to move as a cohesive unit. Being engaged in this group speech meant they could coordinate their activities better in a later task. So I've given you a very brief taster of some of the projects that my lab is engaged in. And if you look in the booklet, you can read more about each of these. We have tasks all about visual attention and the social context of believing someone else is looking at the same screen as you. We also do some project work I didn't describe here, where we look at the role of emotions in how you detect if someone else is lying to you, if someone else is faking that emotion. How do you make that judgment? We have some work looking at the role of culture and social rank. If you're engaged in a task with other people, they're from the same or different culture as you, they're a higher or lower social rank, how does that change how you shift your attention and make decisions in response to them? We also have a set of work looking at behavioral coordination, how people move together, how they chant together in groups, and the consequences that has for them as individuals. And finally, we have a set of experiments using the Hive, looking at the collective mind, how people make choices, how they make decisions, are biased by the people around them. You can read more about all these projects at www.ithink.org or look through the booklet. And please, if you have any questions, send me an email. Thank you very much for your time.